Madeleine Justus was born Magda Schoenberger on October 2, 1916, in Oradea, a small Transylvanian town on the Romania-Hungary border. She was part of a Jewish family, upper middle class, with loving parents, 2 sisters, and 2 brothers. Naturally bright and university educated, she was well-read and well-informed about world events. Because of these qualities, Madeleine, even as a young woman, was able to foresee the danger that Hitler's rise to power posed for her and her family. Fearing for the lives of her and her family during the rise of Hitler and his final solution, Madeleine was forced by circumstance to make extremely difficult and life-altering decisions, such as staying in the country with her family or fleeing with her daughter. These decisions paved the way for the secured survival of her daughter. Madeleine Justus demonstrated incredible foresight, intuition, and selflessness in making these decisions, but most of all, strength, courage, and resourcefulness when faced with almost certain death for herself and her family. This is the story of the conflicts and compromises Madeleine Justus made to survive during the unthinkable horrors of the Holocaust.
Alles, was ihr seid, seid ihr durch mich, und alles, was ich bin ich nur durch euch allein.
Hitler's rise to power as the supreme leader of the Nazi Party was centered around his intense hatred of Jews, as well as his popular argument that Jews were to blame for Germany's serious financial problems. Although he was unsuccessful in his quest to become president, President von Hindenburg's appointment of Hitler to the position of Chancellor on January 30, 1933, unwittingly gave Hitler the power to overthrow the government and set the gears of the Holocaust in motion. His first act as Chancellor was to end Germany's democracy and give himself full control of the government by suspending freedoms of press, speech, and assembly. He then created a law, commonly known as the Enabling Act, allowing him to pass laws without the approval of the President or the German Parliament. With Hitler in power, Germany changed practically overnight. Jews were no longer safe. Hitler created an environment in Germany that was highly anti-Semitic, both by passing formal anti-Semitic legislation and promoting anti-Semitic attitudes and violence. 2 years later, on September 15, 1935, shortly after the death of President von Hindenburg, Hitler and the German Parliament passed the most significant anti-Semitic piece of legislation to date, the Nuremberg Race Laws. These laws stripped Jews of their citizenship, prohibited relationships between Jews and non-Jews, and made it illegal for Jews to employ non-Jews. These laws became the foundation for all policies in hate against Jews, marginalizing them and denying their basic human rights. Propaganda was also a crucial element to elicit Nazi support and loyalty while encouraging anti-Semitism. It depicted Jews as evil, greedy, inferior beings and was spread throughout all aspects of German culture. Pogroms organized by Nazi officials like Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, broadcasted the message that violence against Jews was acceptable. As a result, spontaneous violence against Jews became increasingly commonplace. Anti-Semitic legislation and propaganda soon spread well beyond Germany, signifying the spread of Hitler's power and influence across Europe and the end of Jewish life as they had known it. Meanwhile, the city of Oradea, where Madeleine and her family continued to live, had been thriving under Romanian rule. On August 30, 1940, however, all of that changed. Hitler and Mussolini arbitrated the Second Vienna Award, in which Hungary was given the territory of northern Transylvania, which included Oradea. In exchange, Hungary was to join his alliance, supply troops and labor for his army, and support his plan to eliminate all Jews in Europe. This was instantly disastrous for Madeleine and her family, as well as the 30,000 Jews of Oradea who were now subject to Hungary's strong anti-Jewish laws resulting from its forced alliance with Nazi Germany. By 1943, after Hungary had lost tens of thousands of soldiers fighting for Germany, Hungary's regent of the kingdom, Miklos Horthy, began having misgivings about Hungary's alliance with Germany. Hitler, no longer trusting Horthy, overthrew the Hungarian government and began the most dangerous and devastating time period for Hungarian Jews. When rumors started about Jews being taken from Hungary and other parts of Europe to concentration camps, Madeleine, now a divorced single mother in her early 20s, was paying very close attention. Having read Hitler's Mein Kampf and aware of his vision to exterminate all the Jews in Europe, she immediately tried to convince her family to flee Europe. Hitler was far away, they thought. Surely they must be safe. This was a major source of internal conflict for Madeleine. She wanted to leave the country with her daughter Marta, but didn't want to abandon her parents and siblings who she knew were at great risk. She had to make a compromise, the first of many. She decided that she would stay with her family. Because children were at special risk, this also meant that she would have to hide young Marta. She made the seemingly unthinkable choice to separate from her daughter, hiding her with a Christian couple and having her pose as their developmentally disabled daughter. Doing so meant that Marta would not have to be enrolled in school, nor would there be documentation of her existence as the couple's daughter.
When I realized what is happening, I made an arrangement. Whenever I think about that time, it is very, very difficult because a number of people were very unkind to me. because they said that they cannot understand that their mother could give away her child. My paternal grandmother accused my mother of being a bad mother for giving me away until they went out of car together. And then she knew that mother did the right thing. Yeah. And I'm sure she went directly to the ministry.
When the Nazis came in April of 1944 and asked Madeleine where her daughter was, she said that her ex-husband had taken Marta when they divorced because she had been an unfaithful wife. This was a lie, one that compromised her reputation as a good woman, but also shifted the Nazis' attention from Marta onto herself, a necessary step to help save her daughter. The entire Jewish population of Oradea was then forcibly removed from their homes and packed into a small ghetto that the Nazis had set up in the poorest neighborhood of the city. Ghetto life was harsh with overcrowding, malnourishment, and beatings by guards, but was nothing compared to what lay ahead. On May 27, 1944, with 6-year-old Marta safely hidden, transports from Oradea to the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp began, precisely as Madeleine had foreseen. Auschwitz, opened by the Nazis in 1940, was the largest concentration camp. Located in Poland, it served two main purposes: a source of forced labor and a center for mass genocide. Upon arrival at Auschwitz, prisoners were separated into two groups, those who could perform hard labor and those deemed unfit, including the elderly, the very young, and mothers with their children, who were all immediately sent to the gas chambers. This sorting line was the last place most prisoners saw their loved ones alive.
As we were putting into these wagons, I got separated from my parents with one of my little nieces, somebody who was earlier with my sister, came and got Hedike by the hand and said, "I take you to your mother." If I would have been holding her hand, they would have taken me with her to the gas.
Those who survived the sorting were condemned to unthinkable conditions: sleep deprivation, malnourishment, disease, hard labor, sadistic violence by Nazi guards, and even medical experimentation. For Madeleine, daily life at Auschwitz was filled with conflict and compromise. Although she survived each day with one purpose, to get back to Marta, she was also a compassionate person by nature, wanting to help fellow prisoners in need. Doing so, however, could compromise her own safety and jeopardize getting home to Marta. By the autumn of 1944, the Nazi regime was beginning to crumble. Worried that the prisoners would be rescued by Allied forces and give testimony to the horrors that they had endured, officers killed thousands of prisoners, then forced thousands of others to march away from the approaching Allies. These perilous treks were known as the Death Marches, so named for the often brutal deaths administered by SS officers to those prisoners who could not keep pace, as well as the high mortality rate from starvation, disease, and exposure to the elements.
When we were walking, the people who couldn't go fast enough or who couldn't stay in line, they shot them.
The prisoners, including Madeleine and her sister Gabriella, were taken to Upper Silesia, a small section of Poland where they were forced to dig large trenches to thwart the Allies' advancing tanks. Those who didn't have the strength to dig were shot on the spot. But in January 1945, with the Russians again approaching, the Nazis took the prisoners on another death march, nearly reaching the Czechoslovakian border 2 months later. It was on this march, 2 days before their liberation by American soldiers, that Madeleine tragically lost her sister Gabriella.
And we were walking behind the bus. And there was an air raid, and everybody from the bus had to get off and enter. And my sister was hit with shrapnel from a bomb.
Madeleine, now alone, was taken with the few remaining survivors to the nearest town, where they were given food and medicine. Her desire to go home was strong, but she was emaciated and weak. It was not until 4 months later, in July 1945, that Madeleine was finally healthy enough to return to what was left of home, to return to all that mattered: Marta. Difficult decisions with conflict and compromise were a daily part of life for Jews before, during, and after the Holocaust. The compromises that Madeleine Justus made kept herself alive and kept her daughter Marta alive. They are also the reason that I am alive. Marta was my grandmother, and Madeleine my great-grandmother, and I had the privilege of knowing them both. Madeleine died last year at the age of 99, a mother of 3, a grandmother of 8, and a great-grandmother of 12, and we will all make sure that her story will be shared for many generations to come, generations that her conflict and compromise made possible.